We'll be talking about some very briefly, what I like to call the concept of immortality. And what would that actually be? If we would read in the book of Hebrews, chapter 1, okay, in verse, Hebrews chapter 1, yeah, that's in verse, around verse 10, yeah, it's just very simple, okay, it's just hidden in there. It says they will perish. I'll just read verse 11. It says they will perish, but you remain. Says they will wear out like a garment. Says, but you, let's just go straight to verse 12. Says, but you remain the same, and your years will never end. Um, as simple as that sounds, it packs a punch. What do I mean by that? When it says that you remain the same and your years will not end, that basically explains what it means to be immortal. In other words, just as you're looking at me now, right? Okay, let's say if I'm going to remain the same and yet my years will not end, I could live the next 1,000 years. Okay. But I will, officially, I will look the same. I'm not growing older, just looking the same as you see me now. Yet in age, I could be 5,000 years old. Okay. But I just look the same. Now, that's what I call the concept of immortality. Now, the beautiful thing about this, as simple as it seems, when he says, but you remain the same and your years will never end. Let's read from the book of Revelation. Just something very interesting there. Okay. So in Revelation chapter 4, Revelation chapter 4, um, John says, after this I looked, and there before me was a door standing open in heaven. And the voice I had first heard speaking to me like a trumpet said, come up here. Says, and I will show you what must take place. Then he says, at once I was in the spirit, and there before me was a throne in heaven. Now John is caught up in the spirit, and in this vision he sees a throne in heaven. Beautiful. He says, with someone sitting on it. Now this is the true God that he's talking about here. And then he goes on to give a very wonderful, vivid description. He says, with someone sitting on it, and the one who sat there had the appearance of jasper and carnelian. A rainbow resembling an emerald encircled the throne. Then he says, surrounding the throne were 24 other thrones, and seated on them were 24 elders. We'll get back there. He says they were dressed in white and had crowns of gold on their heads. Now let's take a pause. We just talked about the concept of immortality, right? How that you look at it says, but thou art the same and your years will never end. So you could live for 5,000 years, okay, and you're not getting older. You just still look the same, okay. Now John is describing someone on the throne. But let's start with the other 24 thrones before we come back to the God he was describing. Now, he says, surrounding the throne were 24 other thrones, and seated on them were 24 elders. That's what's translated there. It's from the word presbyter, okay, which means older person. So, what am I trying to say? John is describing something in this vision, and he sees 24 other people. We've heard some rubbish stories about, oh, those are the elders of Israel, blah, blah. It's all rubbish, so keep that aside. Now, John is describing immortals, okay? But these immortals that were sitting on the 24 thrones, he describes it and he says that they look older than the one on the throne itself. He says, surrounding the throne were 24 other thrones, and seated on them were 24 older persons. Okay, so he's describing God. Okay, he describes God, and then he says, surrounding God's throne were 24 other thrones, and on them were 24 older people. So, in the realm of immortality, okay, and heaven and all of that, he says that there are 24 other people who look older, okay, than the God that's on the throne, okay, which is beautiful. I mean, it's just It's absolutely mind blowing when you consider the fact that, yes, they are all immortals, okay? But God remains the same and his years cannot end. And yet there are 24 older people, those who look older than the one that's actually on the throne. It's beautiful. But he goes on to describe the one who's on the throne. So let's back up a bit. He says, and the one who sat there had the appearance of jasper and carnelian. A rainbow resembling an emerald encircled the throne. Surrounding the throne were 24 other thrones and all of that. What is he trying to say? He's saying a rainbow encircled the throne. Where's the rainbow coming from? It's a reflection from the one who's seated on the throne. In other words, it says he had the appearance of jasper and carnelian. I'm reading from the NIV. I believe the King James says chrysolite. What is John trying to tell us? He's trying to tell us that the body of God, okay, is made of precious stones. That's what he's trying to say. The same way man was made from the death of the ground, death of the earth, right? We were made from sand. I mean, our bodies. We put together from clay, and then we were breathed into, you know, God breathed into the man's nose. How tall was God? Just as tall as the man he breathed into his nose, right? So, and the man came to life. So if God decided that, okay, he was going to make humans using the dust of the earth, you understand? We do understand if you read on the cherubim, we understand that, okay, those ones, they were made from every precious stone adorned thy covering. That's what's written in the book of Ezekiel, chapter 28, you know. So what am I trying to say? If God decided to make the angels from the precious stones in heaven, okay, and decided to make man from the dust of the earth, he could have decided to make us using gold anyway. Then we would not have to, gold wouldn't be so precious because everyone would be made of gold, right? That's my point. So what John is describing there? Why is there a rainbow around him? If you pick up a diamond and you stare it in the lights, you would always see that it emits rainbow-like colors. Okay, so that's why every time God is described, like in the book of Ezekiel, okay, and also in the book of Revelation, you always see it says that there's a rainbow around him. Why? Because his body is made from precious stones. And what John looked upon, he described it like chrysolite. Chrysolite is a reddish kind of stone, you know. But in the NIV, it says jasper and carnelian. Those are also precious stones. Anyway, so what he's trying to tell you is when you look upon God, there's a rainbow that emits. So even if he's walking, that rainbow is still there. Why? He is the producer of that. He emits that light from himself. So back to what we're talking about anyway, which is the concept of immortality. Here, like I said in Hebrews chapter 1, okay, verse 12, it says, but thou art the same, and your years shall not end. So God remains the same. His years do not end. He doesn't grow old in appearance, okay? Yet, those around him, the 24 elders, okay, they look older than the one who sits on the throne. But then they all have crowns of gold on their heads and they're all dressed in white, right? Which is beautiful. Now the concept of heaven, it's very easy when your mind has been fine-tuned into these things. It's very easy for you to understand it. Yes, fine, God sits down on a throne, right? He doesn't float through the throne. The throne holds him up. That tells you something, right? That yes, the same way we sit here, that's the same way they sit there. He doesn't, but on this plane, he can walk through this wall. But in heaven, he's not going to be able to walk through a wall there. And that is the same reason why he can sit down on the throne and then the throne holds him up. That's just what I'm just trying to give you an idea of what it's like beyond this world, you know. So it's the same way they of course they do eat. That's the truth. Apart from the fact that Jesus says he will give the hidden manna. But then it's also written in the book of Psalms, right? It says men ate the bread of angels. How? That is manna which they ate in the desert. Okay. That is actually the bread of angels. And it was even angels anyway who gave the law. You know, Yahweh is also an angel. Yeah, that is his law. Okay, so what am I trying to tell you anyway? That immortality, okay, It's about living on forever, which I'm sure we all understand. But then, not there's no decay, not growing old. Okay, that's the concept. You remain the same, and your years do not end. Okay, that's basically it. That will do that for today, and I guess we'll just talk again some other time. Okay, ciao, take care, and we'll talk again soon. Bye.